Hello, Yolanda. Sorry, I stepped out quickly, then came back in again.
And no, don't worry.
Good
I'm just,
evening. Yes.
mm-mm,
Okay.
no problem. You are the only one. I'm just gonna start, and hopefully everyone.
Okay. We can still wait a little if you prefer. I don't mind.
I worry about time, so let me
Time.
start
Okay.
the lesson because the nice thing about it, Terry, is that it records, and sometimes people,
Okay.
you guys are working people, so you might be stuck, and I'm
Traffic.
hoping everyone. But let me just start,
Okay.
and you can listen in. But I think I'm already recording. Yeah. So last week, we started looking at the factors, just the management environment. We started looking at the factors that affect change in businesses, and we spoke about such things as competition. We spoke about consumer demands. We also spoke about disruptiveness. So when there was something like COVID, we started seeing certain things accelerate, like Checker 60. We spoke about that. And we also spoke about the construct of a management team, the bureaucracy. And we spoke about rigid organizations and flexible organizations and what organizations needed to do to become digital enablers. So, and we also touched on digital leadership. So what kind of, you need to be a continually learning organization to put the right skills in place. And there were questions around, if you scale the solution and you are going digital, what should you do to the workforce? And we had to answer that ruthlessly for the sake of the shareholder and say, the shareholder, the business, the reason businesses exist is to make money for the shareholder. So whatever drives value for the shareholder is what we lean mostly toward. And so that was last week. And today we are going to continue and look at the composition of the management environment that you find yourself in the organization that you are in. We are going to understand why understanding the environment matters for decision making. The processes and systems and contingency approaches to management. The micro market, the remote environments will check into that, and how to conduct a basic environmental analysis. That's what we have to answer on theme 2 today. I have a feeling that I might muted myself. So if we're looking at the world that we live in, so why management environment matters, without even reading the slides, I can tell you that management environment is like soil. You put in seeds, and the environment that you are in will enable the seeds to grow. So the management environment that we find ourselves in is a soil in the organization that we work in, because without a great enabling management environment, most of innovation, most of forward looking will be stifled, right? So in the complex world, you need a group of leaders and cascaded and built correctly that will know how to land the change, how to lead teams through changing times, and how to deliver solutions. So if you look at this, the world that we live in is complex and interdependent. There is so much going on that impacts everything. The politics, for example, the war as we currently know it in Ukraine and Russia, and the same war that is happening between Palestine and Israel, is a huge challenge. If you are managing in that environment and you are in the space, you need to know. In fact, most people will think, no, I'm not bothered. I don't do sanctions. I have no imports and exports. But it matters, because who you do business with could not be doing business with the company that is sanctioned. So what controls are in place in our organizations to make sure that we don't do that? What does this mean? This means that even if you're not doing import and export, and you don't need oil specifically, but if you're working for an organization and you're going to use a supplier, simple thing, it's a marketing environment in digital, and you're just going to use a supplier, that's going to help you do a banner. You onboard them quickly, you just need 3 banners. It turns out the organization was opened in a country that is sanctioned. That's how it impacts you, and that's why controls and understanding the environment that you're working in is quite key. And if you've got number 3 is that if you've got the very wrong management environment, the mistakes become more expensive, and competition and complexity increase is quite key. So it's increasingly turbulent as well. Change is becoming more rapid, discontinuous, and unpredictable. And we know this. What you did yesterday is not what you're doing tomorrow. Imagine waking up in a world where everything was simple. We used to go to the shops to get our groceries. It was even a family thing. And then you wake up, you can't even go to the shops anymore. Then what would you do? That's the world that we live in. And to understand the management environment is quite key to help us make better choices. We know what tools to use. You know when to use environmental search, you know when to use strength and SWOTs, because you know exactly what tools you need to pull through for the problems that you could be trying to answer. So this is how the world has evolved. This is theoretic, this part, but bear with it because it's quite key. Since the Berlin Wall, the fall, the globalization started right there. And now we're in the fourth industrial revolution. But before steam engines, at that time, that was the evolution of the world that we find ourselves in. And throughout all those phases of life and phases of times and spaces, management needed to adapt so that they can solve complex problems in those times that they're in, right? So we need, as a manager, if you are currently managing a team, you need to be an enabler. You need to think, how can I enable the business? One example that was given last week is that what happens when a manager doesn't want anything innovative? I mean, that already doesn't sound like a great manager because it means change scares them and they are not enabling the environment. And you need to assess your own your organization's readiness to effect the change. So if you think that, like, if you look at digital transformation, the problem is not really about, look at the organizations that we've worked for. If you work for the big organizations back in the day where they ran transformation programs that lasted 5 years with big decks and big money that was being invested, the issue was never about technology. Technology existed to be exploited. The challenge was the teams internally, the management, how they enabled that. So if you, for example, I worked in an insurance company, and in the insurance company, we were building a portal that was long time ago. This portal, the goal was to move call center people, was to move the calls coming from the call to get a quote for them people to do it online. And this was an intermediated business. What that means is that it was broker led. So the challenge that you have in that is you've got leaders that are supported, that are given money and are even getting bonuses for managing call center volumes. So when you're taking away their call center volumes immediately, you're taking away their livelihood. So then the organization needed to put measures in place, stops that strategy, release benefit to show why it is important that we move towards the digital. That's what we did. And because of a very clearly articulated saving, so cost to serve, it's expensive to serve in the call center. In the call center, as you sit there, you need a person, you need a laptop, you need a system, you need a desk, you need a building. And those things don't go away really, but they can be scaled down because in digital, when it's fully done and well done, you don't need any of that. You need a person to sit from wherever they are sitting and to submit business. So you could get the same business without extra cost, except for running the system. So once you show that benefit, that's when it became imperative and everyone started to believe. That's when you start changing the culture. that's when you start getting buy-in, because people do want to save, even if you're not going to be making more money by having more people in the call center, but you'll be making a cost saving. What that means is that then you will still be getting your bonus either way. So then you recontract with the people, with the management team, and say, I will not be giving you bonuses based on the amount of people that you manage in the call center, but I'll be giving you bonuses based on the cost saving that you have allowed from migrating from brick and mortar to digital. If you have any questions, just to jump through, I will not see hands. So let's look at the organization and the environment. So in organization, we know this, there's an external environment and there is an internal environment. So for external environment, to determine how that looks like and to determine if the external environment allows for us to build our business and to continue doing what we're doing, it simply means we need to apply tools like PESTLE, Pestle. That tool will allow you to scan the external environment: political, economical, I think situation, I'll find that it should be in one of the decks. And you need to understand social, sorry, not situation, social. And so once you understand that environment, you can then see the external environment that your business is functioning on. And then you start looking at internal environment. So on internal environment, you start looking at what are the input factors? What do we need to derive value for our customers? Right? So what do we need? If you're an organization that produces beanies, like hats for winter, it means that your input is whatever that is required to make the beanie. The engineer, if it requires an engineer, that's your input. That's what the wool, the material, that's what is needed. And the in-between is whatever that is required that transforms the input into a value-led output. So the products, the services, the profits and losses and jobs, that becomes key. So the process approach, obviously, you need to focus on planning, organizing and leading and controlling the environment that you are in. And the systems approach, it believes in the interconnectedness of the environment. So it's not really about control. It's about saying these are the moving pieces that make up this environment that we are in. How do we effectively manage them to get value? And the contingency approach is that we need to be clear. There is no right way to manage. There is not only one way to manage. It's a combination of certain things. And it's a requirement in certain situations. For example, a transforming organization, if you are just transforming and moving from zero to nothing, you definitely, as that organization, need a different style of leadership, almost autocratic, because you cannot afford to negotiate with people on what and where the business needs to go. So it requires a different kind of leadership and a different kind of management style. Keep that in mind. For example, when you are starting off in big organizations where things have been done manually for the longest time, negotiation and working on consensus is not the great way. Boom. So if you're looking at this, we're looking at the process approach, which is the POLC framework. We spoke about this: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And I want to make it clear, this is just a framework. If you're looking at this framework in the world that we're living in, it's not a once-off implemented framework. It's a continuous thing. There are times in all our organizations, at least once a year, where we go through planning, organizing, and obviously leading and controlling. And it's not done by one person. It forms part of a bigger organizational narrative. What that means is that there could be a layer in management that focuses on planning, and there could be a layer that's focused on organizing, and there could be a layer that's focused on leading, and the controls that you put in place. So it's not always about humans. It's also about the systems that are set up to enable this environment. So look at this, the systems approach. If you're looking at what is open and versus closed, we spoke about systems. It's interconnected and connected parts, right? So the closed systems, it means there's little to no environmental interaction, and they're very rare in practice because every business has to interact with the environment around it. There is no business that is standalone that's not impacted by that. So open systems, it means you do interact with the environment. Which environment? The one that you are in and the external environment. So that's a realistic model for a business. I would think that the one that is closed is if you are sitting on a laptop and your job is just to lecture. I'm making an example. While you are affected by things like what happens if there's a strike, what happens if that's external environment. So that means that in all honesty, it's very rare. You are always affected by the external environment. When there's load shedding, you cannot continue doing what you're doing. So what is the takeaway from this slide? You need to understand how the systems and approaches actually play out. The POLS framework, planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, and the open versus closed systems. In a business case, when you're evaluating a business case and you start to look at what they mentioned, you look at functions around planning, and then you are, oh, this is a POLC type of organization. This is a framework I can use to prove this case. And the systems approach is the interconnectedness, and you can look at open versus closed. Closed is very rare. Open is definitely what you would understand. So for digital transformation, it works better where you look at the human part, the customer. So if anything I told you forget, don't forget this. When you want to design and land great digital assets and product, you don't look at systems. You look first at your customer and you walk backwards. Who is your customer? Who are you building the solution for? There's something called outside in approach, where you have to understand your customer first, and you not understand it theoretically. You need to be out and engaging the customer so that you can build the solutions that they want. Well, Steve Jobs says people don't know what they want, so I will fulfill the need and I will tell you what you need to fulfill that. It's true in an autocratic management environment where you are building one product, but in complex places like government, like in banks, like in telcos, you cannot do that. You have to engage the customers. They have used your product. They know how to improve certain things and they know what they require from it. I'll pause here and check if there's any questions. Any comment?
No comment.
I wanted to ask, is there any way from the external source that you'll be able to identify when and how to implement the POLC? I don't know if you'll be able to identify when to apply it or when to, yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Don't. It's a fair question. Your question is, how would you know what framework to apply? These frameworks really, think of it this way. It's not something to apply. This specifically is used for you to depict. So you are looking at an organization, you're looking at a business case, you're looking at your current organization, and you are looking, how do these things work together? So in planning, what happens in our organization? In organizing, what happens in our organization? In leading, what happens in our organization? In control, what control do we have in place in our organizations? Because I would use this, if that's the question you're asking, to evaluate where we are as an organization. How are we doing with planning? Are we planning succinctly? If we said that we were going to hit 20 sales, is that what we do? How are we organized? Are we a hierarchy-based organization? Are we flat? And what is the leadership style like in this organization? So I would use that to evaluate, if I was given a business case, how the business is built and how things are run.
Thank you. Yeah, I got the clarity. Thank you.
I would do that. And if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, for digital, these things must not be standalone. How do they come together? Because planning organization can't plan and say, you need to drive 100 sales. And then it comes to digital and you say, I need to give you 10 sales. It turns out I don't even have a website. I'm making an example. So it needs to take into consideration from the customer perspective where we want to get to as a business, and then work backwards to say this is who will enable these parts in our organization. Sorry. So if you if you're looking at contingency in practice, there is a term that is called mechanistic versus organic. This approach depicts that in every organization, in every department is unique. If you have a stable and predictable environment, that's what is called mechanistic. Let's simplify it. That sounds like a big word. If everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, everything flows, no one ever complains, it means there's mechanism for this to happen. There's a mechanism, it knows when to kick itself off, it knows when to start, it knows where to end. That's the mechanism. While if it's unpredictable, fast changing, and it goes on demand, it means it's organic. You cannot control it. So let's look at this. In the current world, governments will be mechanistic. This is how it works. You go in every day, you know what you need to do, clearly defined rules. It's been clearly defined what needs to come down from the CEO, if the CEO in government, and it's standardized. We know how we procure. Listen, we break all those rules all the time in government because they will say procurement, we need to do it better, but we still get tenders being botched, right? So there are standard rules and procedures, how people break them, but it's still they are there. So the example here is a municipal utility or a large-scale manufacturing plant with routine and repeated processes. That's a mechanistic organization. An organic one is startups, right? Let's be clear, startups, more digital organizations like fintechs, Yoko, what Momo, looking at time banks, they're disruptive, and even Capitec during its time before it got a bit bigger. So the decision making is pushed to where information sits. So there is no manager who's telling you what to do. You, as a person who's working on the ground as a product lead, you are getting back and giving them information because you know what your customers want. Why does this slide matter? This slide matters because when you get a case study in exam or in what we're doing, you need to be able to define the contingency in practice in that use case. Is it mechanistic or is it organic? And you need to use these points to support your story and even more. And so what? You know these things. This one is this one is that. So what? The most important part is that for an organic organization, the technology is unpredictable. There's massive market opportunity. You must be willing to take a risk. But for stable, predictable technology, market conditions, everything runs. There's not even need to update systems because you're not going to do anything new, right? So think about it that way. Use those terms in that sense and say this seems to be a mechanistic organizations. They are rigid, top-down decision making, and the disadvantage for them is that they are stable, they're predictable, they never innovate, and market conditions remain the same. Whereas it's opposite for the organic. So let's look at what is called integrated capability framework. Let's think about it. So currently, when you want to drive transformation, people always think newest technology, AI, this and that. It's not about technology. It's about how technology, people, culture, customer orchestrate or interact to deliver value. So if you wanted to look at the capability framework, resource, do you have enough skills in the organizations and knowledge and functional expertise within the organization to deliver on your promise? That's the resource capability. So if you're looking at integrated capability, you look at resources, you look at processes, you look at culture. And process capability are the processes that are in place, operational and adaptable. And when it comes to culture, what values and behaviors? For example, I worked for an organization and they would say that what they want to do is fast. They want to deliver fast. I'm telling you, they don't. Because while they're saying all these things fast in all the brochures, internally, for me, when I send an email, I'll get it 2 weeks later from a person who's replying to me. Right? So You can't make a promise to your customer that you're not able to keep in your culture and your values. What does this matter? You need to work backwards from the customer internally. And you cannot say that you want to be fast to your organization when the processes and the red tape internally doesn't even allow you to do so. So the culture is not just promises and values on the wall, it's what you're able to, what enables your employees to give to your customers. So why does this matter, this slide? Why the integrated capability framework? Why does it matter? Diagnose readiness of your organization. That's what you use it for. Is the organization ready for transformation? Do we have the resources, skills, knowledge, and functional expertise, process capability? Are we mature and adaptable, and culture? So then what are the gaps and what needs to happen? Same thing when you look at a business case, at a use case, look at it this way. What were the resources that were available there? What are the processes that could enable this, and what culture would do that? So then you can align investment, you can guide execution, and you can close the value gap. We spoke about this part, the remote environment. It's a pestle, political, legal, economic, cultural, technology, and ecological forces, little to no control. You cannot control. In that way, so what does it mean? It means that you respond to it. You cannot define what needs to happen. You cannot tell what political landscape will be. So whenever it happens, anything happens, South Africa will to be in war today. It means that then businesses need to respond to that. There's no way you can be prepared for it in terms of business continuity, but you have no control over what's going to happen. It's beyond your control. And so a market environment, which is 2, the outer layer right here, the market environment is where competition happens. You start understanding who your customers are, the competitors, the suppliers, and if they're middlemen, and you've got some influence of that, but no full control. You've got influence over your market share. You've got influence what number you are in competition. You've got influence in terms of who you interact with in suppliers. In fact, you can even choose some influence in that space. But then the macro is within your business, your functions, your policies and strategies. Why does this matter? Because this seems like basics, right? You need to be able to plug what level you are being talked to about. If in a room they start talking political broadest layer, the remote environment, then you know immediately that you have no control over that. But you can respond. And then you shift your thinking to what would we do? What can we do? You cannot now stop the war that has already started. In the market, you have no control fully, but you've got influence. How are we going to win customers? How are we going to create blue oceans and move away from the red of our competitors? And how can we enable ourselves to function better in 2? 1 doesn't exist on its own. It should exist to how you show up. You've got full control over that. So I would say 2, you've got some full control. On 2, if you've managed and run your micro and 1 very well. Feel free to jump in. You don't even need to ask or say you're sorry, just check in.
Yolanda, sorry, you did cut off there a bit. Can you just go back to the previous slide? You
Yeah,
were saying that microenvironment cannot exist without market environment, or
100%.
Okay,
100%. 100%.
got you.
Because think of it this way. The reason you went and opened a business was never really because you like yourself so much. You like how you sing. You like, if you're a singer, it was never about that. It was more around how you can service 2. And the challenge with our organizations right now, if you notice this, especially our big organizations, we are so internally focused. We are so internally focused in our current organizations as we speak. We care about our functions, what my department does. We care about our policies. We care about our strategies, goals and resources. We have forgotten that the reason 1 exists is because of 2. If there was no market, if there were no customers, if there were no competitors, and you had no suppliers, what would you be making your services available to? Oh, so that's just a bit of critical thinking to say, you need to make a case. Your biggest one, if it was me, my biggest one, in fact, it's just textbooks do things very weirdly. I would start with 2 as 1. I would say you need the market and the environment and customers. Then you can build in your organizations and functions. Then you can space it out that way. If I'm the one who wrote the textbook, but I'm not that lucky. So so if you're looking at this, you're looking at the market environment, customers, competitors, which is 2. We're looking at 2, suppliers and intermediaries. I don't think we need to explain this. We know what customers means. People who what they want to buy and how organizations sell, right? Competitors. Oh, and competitors, you know that Potter's force thing that is being used to show you your new entrants, your substitutes, and then you can help you shape your strategy. Guys, this is textbook. In real life, I've been working for 20 years. I am yet to see the diagram of the Potter's forces. These are new entrants, these are the substitutes, these are who can substitute us. I'm yet to see that in that way. Do you know why? Because we have limited that so much. We need to focus on our substitutes. Look at it this way. Kodak was not substituted by a nicer camera. It was substituted by a phone. No one saw that coming. So your competition is not, if you are in retail, your competition, if you work for Foschini, make an example, I don't know anyone works there, your competition is not Edgar's. Your competition is not Edgar's. Your competition is not Shein. Your competition is markets opening up and import exports being made easy, meaning people going to China and buying things without needing you. Your competition becomes, what if there's a drive change to organic clothing? I'm making an example where people don't consume and don't wear anything that is polyester or synthetic, and they're focused on organic made type of clothing. That's your competition. So don't always look at your competition as the people that are in the same segment. In fact, that's limiting. If you're in financial services, your competition is not the other bank. Your competition is the fintechs, is telcos, because they're the ones who are using the base that they have to open accounts and run services. Thank you. We spoke about this one. Pestle, I'm sure you know this. But let me give you this. What people do when they're asked to do a pestle, they just put things in. Let me tell you what to do when you're given a framework. How do you use a framework? If I'm asking you to evaluate an external environment, that's number 1. This evaluates the market environment. This evaluates the remote environment, the external. When you are asked to do that, you look at all these things, not extensively, but you don't look at all these things to just mention them because you did pestle. You look at these things, there needs to be a golden thread. So what? So when you ask yourself, so what, in everything you do, it changes the game. For example, why would you mention a war? I'm making an example, please. Why would you mention a war in Ukraine if you are sitting in the Eastern Cape in South Africa and you're a school teacher and you're doing an environmental analysis? Is that relevant for you? No. What's relevant for you is the municipal voting timings and who's elected as an immediate leader. And that's based. That's what your political becomes. That's how real it is to you, because it matters the services that you can get for the school, isn't it? So when you look at these things, don't just look at them high up in the sky. Think about the reality and the impact in the business that you are in. And where it's not impacted, leave it empty. And the golden thread is that, so what? So what? So what if the mayor is someone else? What services and what budget do they put towards schools? I know this doesn't come at a mayoral level, but play with me. And look at cultural, you're right. So in other countries, like in Dubai and in some of the countries that follow Islam, on a Friday, they close for business. At least 3 to 4 hours is closed. Some of them, they will close and open as soon as they can perform the most, but some of them don't. So what does the culture that you're operating, how does it impact what you do? Because what you want to get to is this a threat? Ask yourself this question. What you are mentioning when you are looking at political, cultural, economical, technological, economic, is this a threat or an opportunity? So culture is a threat to our business because if we close, we won't make so much revenue. Technology is an opportunity because it will help us accelerate and get to our customers. That's the so what when you look at a framework and any other model. Don't just mention things. Build in that golden thread. It is like this because this is how it impacts either you or your customers. I hope this is clear. So environmental analysis, we spoke about this. You can use it supported by your SWOT. You identify environmental variables. SWOT is, for me, it's used for internal and a little bit on, it's definitely internal because then you need to know what the strengths and weaknesses of your organizations. The most important part of SWOT is O, the opportunities. How do you get O? By turning your weaknesses into opportunities and by maximizing your strengths. When you are doing a SWOT, don't just put things in the boxes and say the weakness is that this and this and this. It does not matter. It's a so what that will change your business. For example, you can say our weakness in the organization is that our staff is not skilled to deliver for us this capability. That's a fact, right? So we will lose market share and we will not be innovative. That's how it impacts you. So what's the problem and how does it impact us? What's the problem? So what? Opportunities, how do you take those weaknesses and make them into opportunities? What's the way things can grow and you still win in the market by turning your weaknesses into strength or by playing into new spaces? Goals, pretty much straightforward. So look at this. This is about change management. When you are demonstrating or talking about change in a digital space, this is the model and framework that I look at. What do you need to do? If you are given a business case or you are looking at your current organization and you're thinking, if we are to drive change, we want to implement this solution, how do we drive change? How do we convince everyone to come along? That's what change is. How do we make people believe that this is where they need to be? One, you need to create a sense of agency. Why we're doing this? And don't say we have to. It needs to be data-led. Are we losing money? Then that should be opening line. We're losing 45 million if we don't implement this. What's the opportunity cost? Are we losing market share? This will tell you why the change is essential. Never ever show up with change and say we have to do this. It needs to be backed by data. Are we losing market share? Are we losing money? Are we losing relevance with our customers? That's your why. And bring in people. Don't bring into your coalition. People make this mistake. You bring in people to drive consensus. That's a waste of your time. Bring in people that are driving, at least initially, champions that own up and will advocate for the change. Right? So have a strategic vision. What's your North Star? Is it digital first? Is it seamless experiences? What is your North Star? Define it very clearly. And then you communicate vision consistently across channels, across people, communicate, be found somewhere communicating, right? And obviously, I can't say it, number 5 is obvious. Remove a red tape if you want to enable your business. Remove red tape upfront because people won't make decisions if things need to be approved by 10 people before they can go. Yeah, show wins up front. So this is the win. We've managed to do this, show milestones up front. That's what you do with change because you keep people motivated, seeing that something is happening. Yes, use early wins Cool. And culture is quite key. So you anchor, if you're going to go agile as a company, you anchor everything on iteration. There's no use saying you're going agile when the organization has an SDLC that takes 3 months or 4 months to deliver. That needs to change, isn't it? Yeah, that's change. So when you are looking at an enterprise level change, what does that mean? When you're looking at a change at an organizational level, not at a departmental level, this is the framework you must use, Lamarche. The model, it talks about initiating change. You need to identify the risk. You need the implementation phase, and you need to achieve the results, and you need to sustain outcomes. So you can hear the challenges with the model, but this is a model that looks at things that happen at an enterprise level. Quite key. I'm not going to go to RBV and the real framework. It was not in the textbook, but it's something that I use. And I think it's quite important when you're looking at skills, when you're validating the resource capability internally, right? Remember the integrated capability framework, you start using a resource-based view, right? So it shifts the strategic focus to focusing on your client. So resources, capabilities, and that's it. And then it changes to your real, which is the resource real advantage. That's what you do. You start looking at resources that are not valuable, right? And that's a competitive advantage. If you've got not valuable, right? It's a competitive advantage. If it's valuable but not rare, it's a competitive parity. Meaning if what you produce and what you give to the market is not valuable, then it's a competitive disadvantage. Sorry. But if it's valuable but not rare, then it's a competitive parity. You haven't done anything new. You can't go into market with a banking app and think that you've done something amazing. It's a basic need. So it's valuable, but it's not rare. So if it's valuable and rare, but not inimitable, so it's a temporary advantage. You cannot repeat it again. If it's valuable, rare, inimitable, but not organized, it's unused advantage. So that's it. This, and I think I'll update the in a quadrant because you need to know real that you can map certain things in an organization in your case study. Why would you do that? It's because you're doing internal resource capability to drive that to your integrated capability framework that we discussed earlier that looks at your skills and what's available. Yeah. So this is the culture that's required for digital transformation. And it's not the culture, it's not how people behave. I think we've made that mistake when we think culture is how people behave. Culture is not how people behave. Culture is what an organization makes mandatory. Continuous learning. So it must be a learning culture, and continuous learning means in your KPIs with your team. I worked for an organization, and also in this company, the CEO always shared his books, the books that he was reading. And there was a bookshelf right there, and there was a book club. You need to grab a book and read it, and then we did reviews, and it really, really transformed stuff people knew about. It could range from any topic, leadership, change, how to develop best products. It could range from that. Everyone learns and reads. And you know what? They didn't say our culture is continuous learning and put it nicely and put on posters. They enabled the culture. So culture is not what you say, it's what you do. So knowledge sharing, we know that people say knowledge sharing, but there are slides that sit in people's computers. There's no one common shared space where you can AI search for these things, right? New ideas and increased collaboration, we are aware of that. So when you are building a digital culture, we need to be clear on the what, right? Digital needs to be in people's KPIs so that they can cascade. In the branch, if you are running a bank, you need to make sure that the stuff in the branch the scorecard is based on delivering the digital initiatives. And one of the banks, when I used to go, you would never leave that bank without them making you download an app and telling you this where you can find your statements. Everything they were serving was digital. So quite key, right? So you need multidisciplinary design thinking workshops, right? Online training toolkits, lean workshops, and understand how to run Kanban training and knowledge focus on a reward program. There's a case study, time bank case study. I've updated it. You can even Google it. But I think we will start with these questions. These questions that you're looking at here around time bank, I will put it as, what are those questions that we do? And in the ICE, I'll put these questions as ICE tasks. And then they will need to be, we'll answer only 4 of these, 1 to 4. And then that's what our ICE task for this term will be. So I'll share the case study. Thank you so much. I will pause here. This is my end, and I will ask if there are any questions. Anyone want to ask me?
Hi, Yolanda. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Anyone? Yeah, please. I need to know if it's Can someone put a thumbs up if they can hear me?
Can hear you now.
Oh,
Can you hear?
okay. That means I keep. There was someone who was talking and they're wondering if I could hear them. I could.
Oh, okay. Yolanda, I just want to say thank you for the session. I think it was way much better than today. I think the pace was great. So thank you so much for that.
I took a breath. Thank you.
Um, I I wanted to ask, I tried to look for the recordings on
I hadn't uploaded it, and that's my apologies. I'm going to do all of them tonight.
Okay, all right, thank you. No, that was my question. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. Anyone, any questions? Can I please ask Neskai, sorry if you don't mind me just calling you out, or Tara, can you please add an election to the WhatsApp group? I feel like it can always get missed. Sometimes people don't see this in the chat. Please just add him on the WhatsApp group. I'm asking, please. Okay, that's it on my side, guys. I'll upload these slides because now I'm done with this entire theme and I can upload the recordings. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.